You need to understand a person can want you back and still not be ready to choose you properly, and that one sentence can save you months, even years of heartbreak. Because the most confusing pain is not being unloved, it's being half wanted. It's feeling their pull and their hesitation at the same time. It's watching them drift toward you and then retreat, as if your love is a shore they want to touch, but never live on. And when you've loved an avoidant, you know that feeling. You feel it in the little messages, the sudden warmth, the nostalgia, the way they keep a thread between you, and you start thinking, if I just say the right thing, if I just stay patient, if I just give them one more chance, they'll finally come all the way in. But you need to understand, desire without courage is not commitment, and love without action is just a feeling someone enjoys while you pay the price. There is a difference between missing you and choosing you. Missing you can happen in lonely moments, at night, when their distractions stop working, when they see something that reminds them of you, when their pride gets quiet for a second. But choosing you is daytime behavior. Choosing you is consistency. Choosing you is a plan, a conversation, an apology with change behind it. Choosing you is someone who is willing to risk rejection to be honest, someone who is willing to be uncomfortable to be real. And you need to understand, an avoidant can miss you deeply and still protect their ego more than they protect your heart. Because admitting they want you back means admitting they were wrong, admitting they hurt you, admitting they ran when love asked for presence. And that kind of honesty can feel like death to someone who has spent their whole life surviving by pretending they don't need anyone. So when they hover, when they check in, when they send that casual message that looks innocent but lands heavy in your chest, you need to understand it might be longing, it might be regret, it might be love, but it might also be fear. Because you were their safety, you were their comfort, you were the person who kept proving you'd stay. And now that you're quiet, they feel the ground shift. Sometimes they reach out not because they are ready to build something healthy, but because they want to calm the panic of losing access. They want to know you're still there, still soft, still open, still available, because if you are, they can relax without changing. And this is where you get to choose something different, because you need to understand your job is not to decode every signal. Your job is to protect your dignity. Your job is not to become an emotional translator for someone who refuses to speak clearly. Your job is not to chase closure from a person who gives it only in crumbs. Your job is to stand in your worth and say, if you want me in your life, it has to be real. Because if they truly want you back, they will not only want your presence, they will respect your boundaries. They will not only want your attention, they will offer you security. They will not only say they miss you, they will show you they're willing to show up. You need to understand, this is why your standards matter most when your feelings are loud. Because feelings can trick you. Feelings can make you romanticize. Feelings can make you forget the nights you cried, the confusion you lived in, the way you felt alone inside a relationship, the way your heart kept trying while theirs kept hiding. And if you don't have a standard, you will accept a return that feels good for a week, and then you will find yourself right back in the same cycle, waiting for someone to become what they promised while they become comfortable again. So let this be your truth. You need to understand wanting you back is not the same as being ready for you. Someone can crave you and still not be capable of loving you in a way that is safe. And the highest form of self-respect is not refusing them, it's requiring something from them: clarity, consistency, effort, emotional presence. If they can meet you there, beautiful. If they cannot, then your heart does not need to be the place where they practice coming and going. Because you deserve a love that doesn't whisper, a love that doesn't hover, a love that doesn't test the door and then leave you standing there with your hope in your hands. You deserve a love that chooses you out loud, with actions, with honesty, with bravery, and anything less is not a sign of romance. It's a sign you should protect your peace. You need to understand, avoidants often show longing through safe behaviors, because safe is the language their nervous system trusts. Safe means they can reach without risking rejection. Safe means they can touch your world without stepping fully into it. Safe means they can feel close while still keeping an exit door open. And this is exactly why their signals can feel so confusing, because to you, love looks like clarity. Love looks like presence. Love looks like, I want you. I miss you. I'm here. Let's fix this. But to them, love can look like hovering, like testing, like half steps that protect the ego, because direct vulnerability feels like standing in the middle of a room with no armor. So you need to understand if they secretly want you back, they might not show it with grand gestures, they might show it with small, indirect movements that let them retreat the moment it feels too real. They might accidentally bump into you online, suddenly watching your stories again, liking an old post, reacting to something small, not saying much, but making sure you notice them. You need to understand that is a form of contact without commitment. It says, I'm still here, without saying I'm coming back. They might send a message that looks casual, a meme, a simple, hey, a random question, because a casual message gives them a shield. If you respond coldly, they can pretend it didn't matter. If you respond warmly, they get reassurance. And you need to understand, reassurance is addictive to someone who fears being truly seen, because reassurance gives comfort without requiring growth. They might ask about you through mutual friends, not directly, because direct questions feel too intimate, too exposed. They might suddenly become curious about your life, but in a controlled way. How have you been? How's work? Are you okay? And it sounds sweet, but there's a distance in it, like they want information, not intimacy. You need to understand information helps them manage their fear. If they know you're still available, they feel safer. If they know you've moved on, they feel threatened. And so they collect little pieces of you, like someone holding onto a photograph instead of showing up for the real person. They might bring up memories. Remember because memories are a safe form of closeness. They can relive the warmth without being responsible for it today. They can feel the connection without having to rebuild it. And you need to understand, nostalgia can be genuine, but it can also be a way to reopen your heart without offering you a plan. They might also show subtle jealousy, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the shift in tone when they hear you're doing well, the strange discomfort when they realize you're not waiting. Because you need to understand, your healing is not neutral to someone who depended on your attachment. When you stop orbiting them, they feel the loss of control, and control is what kept them calm. And here is where you must protect yourself, because you need to understand, indirect contact can feel like progress, but it can also be the beginning of the same old cycle, the cycle where they take tiny steps forward and you take huge emotional steps toward them. You start filling in the blanks, you start reading meaning into crumbs, you start thinking, this means they care, and maybe they do care, but caring is not the same as choosing. Caring is not the same as building. Caring is not the same as showing up consistently when it's uncomfortable. So you have to watch the pattern, not the moment. You have to watch what happens after you respond. Do they get warmer and more consistent, or do they disappear once they've gotten the reassurance they wanted? You need to understand, your job is not to chase their half steps. Your job is to hold your standards so high that only real effort can reach it. You don't punish them. You don't beg them. You don't send paragraphs trying to extract clarity from someone who is still hiding. You stay calm. You stay kind. But you don't become available for confusion. Because the safest thing you can do for your heart is to make clarity the price of entry. If they want you back, let them say it with actions. Let them show you consistency. Let them choose honesty over comfort. And if they can't, you need to understand those safe behaviors are not love. They are longing without courage. And longing without courage will always leave you carrying the emotional weight alone. You deserve a love that doesn't hover. You deserve a love that doesn't test you. You deserve a love that walks up to you with intention and says, I'm here and I'm ready. And anything less is not a sign you should chase harder. It's a sign you should protect your peace harder. You need to understand, your job is not to decode every signal. Your job is to protect your dignity. And that is a sentence you will have to repeat to yourself when hope tries to take the steering wheel. Because when you've loved an avoidant, you become trained to look for meaning in tiny things. A like on a story feels like a confession. A how are you feels like an apology. A memory they mention feels like a promise. And you need to understand, this is how your heart becomes exhausted. Not because you don't love, but because you keep translating breadcrumbs into a banquet. You keep turning small signs into a full story, and every time you do that, you hand your peace over to someone who hasn't earned it. Dignity is what you keep when your feelings are loud. Dignity is what remains when someone tries to pull you back with half effort. Dignity is when you stop behaving like love is something you must chase, and you start behaving like love is something that must meet you. And you need to understand protecting your dignity doesn't mean you become cold, it means you become clear. It means you stop making your heart available for confusion. It means you stop rewarding inconsistency with access. It means you stop being a place where someone can return only when they feel lonely, only when they feel jealous, only when they feel bored, and then disappear again when intimacy demands responsibility. Because a signal can be many things. A message can be curiosity, nostalgia can be loneliness, jealousy can be ego, and you need to understand none of those things automatically equal love that is ready. The avoidant can feel a pull toward you and still be unwilling to step into the discomfort of choosing you properly. And this is where your dignity becomes your protection, because if you chase every signal, you become the emotional engine again. You become the one keeping it alive again. You become the one holding the bridge while they decide whether to cross it. But if you protect your dignity, you stop building bridges to people who keep standing on the shore watching you struggle. So what does dignity look like in real life? It looks like not rushing to reply just because they finally reached out. It looks like responding calmly, not emotionally pouring yourself out as if one message erased the past. It looks like asking direct questions without fear. What are you looking for? Why are you reaching out now? What has changed? Because you need to understand clarity is not a demand, it is a standard. It looks like not accepting vague invitations. We should meet sometime, without a plan, a day, a time, an intention. It looks like not reopening your whole heart just because they knocked softly, because a soft knock can be genuine, but it can also be a test, and your dignity says, I don't move on tests, I move on truth. You need to understand, the moment you require clarity, you shift the entire dynamic, because avoidants are often comfortable when they can keep things undefined. Undefined means they can take your warmth without giving you certainty. Undefined means they can come close and still claim they never promised anything. Undefined means they can enjoy the benefits of connection while avoiding the responsibility of commitment. But when you protect your dignity, you take away the gray area. You take away the space where they can keep you as an option. You take away the fantasy where they can return whenever they want and find you exactly where they left you. And yes, that can scare them, but you need to understand, if your boundary scares them away, it doesn't mean you asked for too much. It means they were only comfortable with you when you were easy to keep. And here's the hardest part: you need to understand dignity sometimes means letting someone miss you from a distance. It means accepting that their longing is not your responsibility to soothe. It means not rushing to save them from the consequences of their own patterns. Because if they truly want you back, they will rise to meet your standard. They will become clearer, not vaguer. They will become more consistent, not more confusing. They will show effort over time, not intensity for a moment. So when you feel that urge to decode, pause. When you feel that urge to chase meaning, breathe. When you feel that urge to turn a small sign into a big hope, remind yourself you need to understand your dignity is not negotiable. You can love someone and still require respect. You can miss someone and still protect your peace. And the right love will not make you feel like you have to earn the right to be chosen. It will choose you with clarity, with action, with a steady hand, and that is what your heart deserves. You need to understand the real win is not getting them back. It's getting your power back. Because when you've loved an avoidant, power slowly slips out of your hands in the most invisible ways. It slips when you start checking your phone too often. It slips when you start rereading old messages to find hope. It slips when your mood depends on whether they are warm or distant. It slips when you start editing your emotions so you don't scare them off. It slips when you accept silence as normal, mixed signals as romantic, inconsistency as just how they are. And one day you wake up and you realize you've been living like love is a test you must pass, instead of a home you are meant to feel safe in. You need to understand that is not love, that is survival. And you were not born to survive relationships, you were born to thrive in them. Getting your power back begins the moment you stop seeing their return as the prize, Because if you make their return the prize, you will accept anything that looks like it. You will take half effort and call it progress. You will take vague words and call them commitment. You will take a late apology and call it destiny. And you need to understand that is how people get trapped. The avoidant comes back with emotion, you melt, you soften, you open the door wide, and then slowly the same pattern creeps in again. Because they didn't return with transformation, they returned with fear. And fear can look very romantic for a moment. Fear can sound like love when it's speaking urgently, but fear fades when comfort returns, and then you're back to waiting. So you need to understand your power is your standards. Your power is your calm. Your power is your ability to say, I care about you, but I will not abandon myself for you. Your power is your ability to require clarity, not because you're controlling, but because you're done with confusion. Your power is your ability to let someone feel the consequences of losing access to you without rushing to rescue them, without rushing to make it easier, without rushing to be the one who heals everything. Because the truth is, you can love someone and still refuse to be their emotional safety net while they refuse to grow. You can miss someone and still say, not like this, not again. And if they return, the only way your power stays in your hands is if you set the terms. Not harshly, not with drama, but with quiet self-respect. You need to understand, the standard is not, say you miss me. The standard is, show me you're safe. The standard is not, promise you won't disappear. The standard is, build consistency over time. The standard is not, convince me with words. The standard is, prove it with behavior. Because your heart is not a place for someone to visit when they're lonely. Your heart is a place someone must honor if they want to live there. Getting your power back also means you stop chasing closure. You stop needing them to admit they were wrong for you to feel whole. You stop needing their regret to validate your worth. You need to understand, the moment you require their realization to feel valuable, you hand them authority over your self-esteem. And that is the most dangerous kind of attachment, because it makes you wait for a person who may never be emotionally brave enough to give you what you deserve. Your power returns when you say, even if you never admit it, I know what I gave. Even if you never come back, I know what I deserved. And here is what will change your life. You need to understand, when you get your power back, your energy changes. You stop showing up desperate. You stop showing up eager to be chosen. You start showing up steady. You start showing up selective. You start showing up like someone who knows that love is not just a feeling, it is a practice, it is a pattern, it is consistent care. And that version of you, the version that no longer begs, no longer chases, no longer accepts crumbs, becomes magnetic. Not because you're playing games, but because you are finally rooted in self-respect. So whether they come back or not, you need to understand the goal is the same. You return to yourself. You reclaim your peace. You rebuild your confidence. You become the kind of person who can only be met with maturity because you are no longer available for half-love. And if they do return and they want access to the new you, they will have to meet you with truth, with effort, with consistency, because your power is not a gift you hand to someone who is unsure. Your power is a boundary you keep, and it will protect you until the right love arrives, the love that doesn't make you lose yourself in the first place. You need to understand, if they return, they must meet you at a higher standard, because love without standards is not love, it's access. And access is what an avoidant often wants most. Access to your warmth, access to your attention, access to the comfort you provide, without the responsibility of showing up consistently. That's why you must be careful, because the moment someone senses you are still available with the same old softness, they can slide back into the same old pattern, and you'll find yourself again in that familiar place, hoping, waiting, overthinking, shrinking your needs, and calling it patience. You need to understand, your heart cannot survive another round of that. Your heart needs safety, and safety is built through consistency, not through intensity. Meeting you at a higher standard does not mean perfection. It means effort that lasts longer than a mood. It means clarity that doesn't disappear after you forgive. It means communication that doesn't only show up when they feel lonely. It means they don't just reach out, they follow through. They don't just say, I miss you. They say, I'm here and I'm ready to do this differently. And then they prove it day by day with the smallest things: being on time, being honest, being present, being accountable, being willing to have uncomfortable conversations without running. Because you need to understand, if they truly want you back, they must be willing to face what they avoided: vulnerability, commitment, emotional responsibility. A higher standard also means you stop accepting vagueness. No more, "we should meet sometime." No more, "I've been thinking about you," with no direction. No more half invitations that keep you hopeful, but keep them safe. You need to understand, vagueness is the avoidant's favorite hiding place, because vagueness lets them feel close without being responsible. Vagueness lets them keep the door cracked without stepping through it. Vagueness lets them retreat without consequence. So if they come back, you require clarity, not as a demand, as a boundary. You can be kind and still be firm. You can be soft and still be clear. You can say, "I'm open to talking, but I'm not doing confusion again." And you need to understand, the right person will not be offended by that. The right person will respect it. Meeting you at a higher standard also means they respect your pace. They don't rush you to trust them. They don't act like your boundaries are punishment. They don't say, "Why are you still bringing up the past?" when the past is the reason trust is broken. You need to understand, someone who has truly grown does not see your caution as an inconvenience. They see it as the cost of repair. They understand that healing takes time. They understand that consistency is how you rebuild safety. They understand that your heart is not something they get back instantly just because they finally had a moment of clarity. And you need to understand something else. A higher standard is not only about what they do, it's about what you do. It's about you staying grounded when they return with emotion. It's about you not giving everything too soon. It's about you remembering the pattern, not just the longing. It's about you not confusing their urgency with their maturity, because sometimes people come back intensely, and intensity can feel like love, but it can also be panic. And panic does not build a healthy relationship. Panic builds a temporary connection that collapses the moment things get comfortable again. So if they want you back, let them earn you. Let them show you they can hold steady when it's not exciting. Let them show you they can communicate when they're stressed. Let them show you they can stay present when you have feelings. Let them show you they can be reliable without you having to chase. Because you need to understand, you are not asking for too much, you are asking for the minimum requirements of a safe love. And if they cannot meet you there, then you need to understand, their return is not a second chance, it is a second test. And you do not have to keep retaking the same test until you fail yourself. You can love them and still say no. You can miss them and still choose your peace. You can hope for them and still protect your heart. Because the highest standard you will ever set is this: I will not lose myself again. Not for anyone. Not for potential. Not for nostalgia. Not for a person who only wants me when they feel the fear of losing me. You need to understand, if they want you back, they must come back to a version of you that is no longer available for half love. And that is not cruelty, that is wisdom.